goes into what we teach our kids. We've got people like Bill Gates spending hundreds of millions of dollars promoting testing standards. We've got government initiatives, and we've got corporations spending heaps of money to influence what's being taught too. They're all trying very hard to control the messages we teach our kids. So you can imagine how angry they must get when an actual teacher dares to go off script to teach kids the scariest lesson of all, the truth. Teachers, who do they think they are? So that's exactly what happened recently in Michigan. A middle school teacher there named Alan Barron was teaching some 8th graders a history lesson. He's been a teacher in the same district for 36 years, so he's pretty much dedicated his whole life to teaching kids. An assistant principal decided to sit in on this particular history lesson. On the day in question, Mr. Barron was teaching the kids about America's Jim Crow racial segregation laws, as in the actual laws that existed in our country for almost a century that segregated whites from blacks. The Jim Crow laws existed just as much as our Constitution exists, just as much as any real, actual legislation has in the U.S. And Mr. Barron is a history teacher, so he was teaching the kids about our actual, real, legal history. During the lesson, he showed the kids a video of how white people used to paint their faces black to imitate black people for entertainment. Again, that's just a fact of our country's history. It actually happened. But the assistant principal sitting in on the class got offended. And guess what? After 36 years of teaching, Mr. Barron was suspended. Only a few weeks before he was set to retire, too. The kids were extremely upset because they loved their teacher. And racially mixed kids in the class were offended because this was a part of history that concerned their families. Why shouldn't they be allowed to hear the truth of our country's actual racial history? Mr. Barron has since been reinstated, but this suspension just illustrates how dangerous our politically correct establishment can be. Are all of our government institutions, billionaires, and corporations trying to teach our kids for a better future? Or are they just trying to indoctrinate them into being perfect little consumer bots with no understanding of just how crazy the world can be? As long as we keep suspending teachers for telling the truth, I think the answer to that question is pretty clear. Tonight, let's talk about that by following me on Twitter @TheResident.